Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this edition of Defense News Weekly, we're in London at the DSEI trade show, one of the largest events like it in the world. While here, we've learned a lot about the future of both the British and other European militaries, with in-depth interviews, up-close video, and leading analysis. This is Defense News Weekly. Welcome to this edition of Defense News Weekly. I'm Jeff Martin, here from just outside London at the DSEI trade show. While here, we've seen a lot of neat tech and other things on display, which showcase the future of both the British and other European militaries. But perhaps the biggest news of the show here was that Italy has joined the UK's Team Tempest, setting off a large-scale competition across Europe to build a sixth-generation fighter jet. Here's a look at part of the announcement.
Yesterday, the National Arms Directors of Italy and the UK signed a statement of intent on behalf of their respective governments. This confirms that both nations are committed to working together on Tempest to meet the future combat air requirements. I'm delighted to announce that earlier today, a further statement of intent was signed between the UK and Italian industry to support this work and to help ensure that we can deliver a competitive, connected, and capable future combat air system to meet our future respective nations' requirements.
Leonardo, Avioaereo, Elettronica, and BDA in Italy are all leading players in their respective fields, and I'm confident I speak on behalf of all of us when I say how very excited we are to be part of this prestigious, ambitious, and strategically important program.
When UK industry, the Royal Air Force, and the government stood shoulder to shoulder at the launch of the UK Combat Air Strategy last year, we were clear that international partnering would be an essential element of our success. It was our belief that international partnering would provide the best opportunity to achieve our future military requirements and our national objectives. We were convinced that our allies and potential partners around the world had shared future military requirements, and that together we would be stronger and better able to deliver affordable future military capability.
A big part of the British Army's modernization plan is to upgrade their Warrior infantry fighting vehicles to a much more modern standard. It's being led by contractor Lockheed Martin, but it's a program that's had a lot of problems in the past. So to get an update on where things stand, I went over to talk to both Lockheed Martin and the British Ministry of Defence. Take a look.
The difference is going from a 1970s automobile, to a 2020 car. The difference being almost like incomparable.
It's an absolute upgrade of the turret. So it's a 40mm cannon instead of the 30mm cannon that used to be on there. It means it's much more lethal. It's got an ammo handling system which enables us to change nature very quickly. It also means, and it's really important, that they load up the weapon before they go out into an engagement.
Being able to fire this vehicle whilst moving, that is critical. You're going from a point where you have to stop the vehicle, fire the vehicle, start the vehicle, to a vehicle that then fires whilst it's moving. So you're firing at 30 miles an hour.
It's a step change. So if you talk to the operators, and we obviously do, the ability to focus on the mission in front of them, the ability to execute what needs to be done is absolutely a game changer for them. It's much easier to use. For instance, the current Warrior is self-guided, so you have to decide how to offset the shot. With this one, because it's software controlled, it'll hit the target every time. That's an absolute step change. So we spent a long time developing the design, making sure it's right. We're now in the trials phase, which is really the final bit of the contract. So we've just successfully completed 20 battlefield missions. We've got about a year and a half's worth of trials to go, and at the end of that, we'll both demonstrate that we've met the contract from a compliance perspective. We'll also demonstrate that we've met it from a reliability perspective as well.
The next part for the reliability trials is obviously we go through the next 20 battlefield missions by November, and then 60, 80, 100, and finally up to 119 battle emissions, and that grows the reliability of the vehicle. And then the next part then is talking about how we move towards production of the vehicle. And production of the vehicle is subject to a mod approval. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to lay the evidence down that we have a reliable vehicle that meets the system requirement. We have a functional design that works, and then we put that into Mod Centre, into the Treasury.
Another part of the British Army's plan to modernize is to upgrade their Challenger 2 main battle tanks. Originally, both BAE Systems and Rheinmetall were competing to do that, but now both companies have formed a joint venture based here in the UK to address the upgrade. So I visited their stand to see what they want to do to the tank.
Well, our proposition is that we take the base vehicle, we replace it with a brand new turret. The turret is the same size and shape as the old turret, so that the armour packs can be installed, unaffecting the survivability of the vehicle. We've installed the smoothbore weapon, it's the L55A1 high pressure smoothbore gun, and a qualified family of munitions, which we think brings the vehicle up from an armament perspective to cutting edge. It's got a new surveillance and target acquisition suite from Thales and a new fully digitized turret architecture. More lethal, can see the target, engage the target, and kill the target. The turret structure actually saves almost 700 kilos compared to the earlier turret. That allows us to include the capability of active protection without increasing the gross vehicle weight. Well, our requirement is to engineer the capability, so provide the structure, the payload, the electrical power, and then we will engage with the customer as to what their preferences are. We're expecting the customer to set out their requirement in the second half of this year. We're expecting to be in a position to provide tenders Q1 next, with some sort of target of a contract award end of Q3, beginning of Q4 next year. It's a joint venture between Rheinmetall and BAE Systems. Our focus is combat vehicles, both for the UK and export. Partnership's actually very strong indeed. Two companies that already work together in the munitions sector, have an established relationship with regard to Boxer going forward, and that was out of which the idea developed, and we concluded the agreements at the end of last year. We went through the market approvals process for the first half of this year and launched on the 1st of July. The customer expressed their preference, which was for the Rheinmetall proposal. So we've now taken that forward. We have amalgamated the teams to work together. I mean, inevitably there was one engineer saying my design was better than yours, but those bridges have been crossed. It's very clear what the customer wants, and we're now in the process of taking that forward and maturing it. I mean, clearly BAE were the design authority, so there's quite a lot of knowledge and detailed tacit knowledge with regard to the history of the vehicle, which has been useful and reinforced the proposition.
One neat part about coming to trade shows like this is we get to see new technology being unveiled by many companies. One such company this week was Norwegian company Nammo, who unveiled a ramjet-powered missile at their stand that they say has a wide variety of applications. Here's what they think it can do.
Ramjet technology has been around for many years, but now finally we've been able to control it a little bit with the new computers and the computer force that we have, and that is also enable us to develop this ramjet and control it much better. This type of missiles, the ramjet, is actually able to fly for 350-400 seconds for a typical 10-inch motor, to being propulsive all the time and going maybe Mach 3, 3.5 all the time. It can also be throttled so that you can regulate the speed as you go and adapt it to the threat and the threat information that is coming in. It is also the concept that you see here has an integrated booster, which means there is no drop-off booster that falls in the head of someone if you're fighting from an urban area. So it can be used for ground to air, it could also be used for ship to air in naval versions, but it is also optimum and very good for air to air purposes launched from an aircraft. So it's possible for all of these scenarios. And you could also think about it in a ground to ground, like rocket artillery type of version as well. So there's really no limitation to the technology and how to utilize it. We have already tested, we have built a test center at Raufoss where we have already tested around 200 motors actually, and we've been able to program trajectories from sea level up to like 50,000 feet and going Mach 3 to Mach 5. So we're able to also program a trajectory as we're testing there. And the next step would be then to fly a real missile out, and of course then we need a forebody. We hope to do that in a couple of years. All the Western nations are looking for long-range air defense especially, but we see also that long-range artillery, rockets and such things is also very much in demand. So, and all the nations seems to have plans for these type of weapons, so that will be, we see a huge market potential for this, for Nammo going forward.
To keep up to date with all of our coverage, be sure to visit our Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn pages. Also be sure to add us on Apple's news app and other platforms for the latest updates. And when we come back, we're going to talk to the commander of NATO's Allied Land Command about both NATO deterrence and readiness in Europe. Based in Turkey, NATO's Allied Land Command has a wide responsibility across all of NATO, but mainly it's there to deploy capable, ready forces across Europe. So this week here at DSEI, Jen Judson talked to the commander of that unit, both about what they're doing and their relationship with their host nation.
When it comes to the U.S. and Turkey, relationships are a little frayed right now. Can you just speak to your relationship with Turkey in terms of your command, your NATO command there?
It's a major NATO headquarters, LANDCOM. We are in Izmir, Turkey, a beautiful city. We could not ask for better host nation support. I will tell you that day in and day out, I work with Turkish officers every day. I have Turkish officers under my staff with me here right now. The military to military relationship, which is one that concerns me, is very positive. Sometimes there are challenges at a political level. We're aware of those, but we remain good soldiers, apolitical, and we work through those. And like I said, Turkey is a stalwart alliance member in terms of the size and strength and capabilities of its army. Fantastic. And we got to remember the history, usually from a U.S. perspective. They were with us in the Korean War. They are major contributors to NATO operations now in Afghanistan, in Kosovo, and certainly to my headquarters.
Can you talk about the different layers that NATO has in terms of deterrence right now, and what your role is in sort of organizing all of that or carrying out the land side of all of that? It's a little bit confusing, so if you have a good way of explaining it, that would be great.
I could write a book on it. It is complex, but all very, very positive. I'll just start with the NATO response force. We've talked a little bit about it already, but that NATO response force is on call, ready to move day in and day out continuously. We rotate headquarters through that, but from the land, which I'm most concerned with, we have a corps headquarters. It's currently the 1st German Netherlands Corps. Next year it will rotate to the Euro Corps, and the year after that to NATO Rapid Deployable Corps Turkey. And then underneath that land headquarters, there is what's called a VJTF, the Very High Readiness Joint Task Force. And that is a brigade combat team. You're thinking United States Army, that is a full-up brigade combat team, manned at readiness. It has the equipment it's supposed to have, it has the people it's supposed to have, and they train together. Now it comes from several different nations. Right now it happens to be centered on Panzer Lehr Brigade 9 from the Bundeswehr, the German Army. A fantastic formation. They got certified last November in Norway, and I spent some time with them on the ground. Absolutely fantastic. But then it has a lot of enablers too. An aviation task force provided by the United States. It has deep fires capability, ISR capability, sustainment, and that is the basis of the NATO response force, that brigade. There are reinforcement forces behind that follow on very, very quickly. I just really can't get into that right now, but the one I described moves very, very quickly. Now, the other thing you mentioned was the enhanced forward presence. That's a NATO activity. That's tied to Poland and the Baltics. And that was a decision made after the illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014 to put presence on the ground. And those are, I mentioned NATO activities, but they're really host nation bilateral arrangements. For the United States, we have a battle group on the ground continuously in Poland, working with the host nation forces there. In Estonia, it's a battle group led by the UK. In Latvia, it's a battle group led by Canada. In Lithuania, it's a battle group led by Germany. Now, I said led by. There are many other nations involved in those battle groups across the board. And that shows NATO resolve and commitment to our shared values and our freedom and having boots on the ground. There's no stronger message of commitment to our allies.
Okay. What more do you think NATO and your command could do to enhance deterrence in Europe?
The NATO command structure adaptation that I mentioned, that was agreed on at the Brussels summit in 2018. There's a lot of initiatives there. Theater enablement, we're working on allied military reinforcement concepts. Our exercises, again, this is about collective defense. NATO is based on collective defense, and those training and exercises. Our number one line of effort, our main priority in the LANDCOM headquarters is to build and sustain readiness. And we have 9 corps commanders, 2 division commanders. They're switched on and focused on that. That sends deterrence. Enhanced forward presence sends, deters in that regard too. But we will continue to build and sustain readiness.
So this process that you're going through right now, is there sort of an end date where you'll say we have all this ironed out? What's the process here in terms of what you're working on?
Yeah, the NATO Command Structure Adaptation Plan will be fully realized by 2023. And it's about culture change. It's not one thing. The NATO Command Structure at the height of the Cold War had about 25,000 personnel in it. We've optimized and restructured over years, and we cut down quite a bit. So we're adding 1,200 people, but that's just the tip of the iceberg, adding 1,200 people to the NATO Command Structure Adaptation. That'll take us from about 7,700 up to closer to 9,000. But it's about culture change. It's a joint and domain-specific command and control CONOPS. It's about joint fires and targeting. It's about building and sustaining readiness. It's about theater enablement. The list goes on, but that's a good 3-4 year process till it's fully realized, but it provides us focus. The other thing we just recently got this past May was a NATO military strategy. First strategy we've had in a while. It's very sound, it's very good. The nations all agreed to it this past May, and now it's our job to operationalize that across the alliance.
Okay. What are some of the cultural aspects that do need to change?
Well, I think cultural differences are diversity. There needs to be a clear focus on readiness at echelon. It exists in pockets with the NATO response force and others, but we need to be ready across the board to go 360 degrees. Sometimes maybe only look in one direction, or hey, I just came off NATO response force. So, but culturally, we have great cultures, 29 different nations involved here, and it is a strength of this alliance. Unity is our center of gravity, our strategic center of gravity, and it is a strength.
Stay tuned. When we come back, we'll be looking at the future of the Royal Air Force. On this week's Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Brian Parker offers you his latest tips.
It seems early, but now is the time to budget for the holiday season. The holidays are full of festive fun, but they can also be stressful on you and your wallet. It's easy to overspend on those you love and lose track of spending during the season of giving. So here's a few tips to help you out. 1, create an overall holiday budget. Obviously, consider the cost of gifts as well as the expense to ship them, but don't forget about decorations, wrapping paper and cards, and travel if you're headed out of town. And let your budget dictate your purchases. Keep from overspending by sticking to a set amount per person. Another good way to save money is to shop during discount holidays like Black Friday and take advantage of online deals. Lastly, track your spending. When shopping, print a copy and keep your budget handy to see exactly how much you have remaining. Try turning on your banking app notifications to remind you how much you've already spent. This will keep you and your generous spirit accountable. Now, with your budget and these smart spending tips in mind, you'll give yourself the gift of a more relaxing and joyous holiday season, but also a great start to the new year.
Thanks, Brian. We'll see you next time. To get more Defense News coverage, be sure to visit our website at defensenews.com and subscribe to our Early Bird Brief, delivered to your inbox every weekday morning to get you ready to start the day. And stay tuned, because when we come back, we're going to look at the future of the Royal Air Force. Right now, the Royal Air Force is in the midst of a both massive modernization and transformation that rivals anything we've seen in its history. To get some more information about the future of that service, Jill Itoro decided to find out what she could. Take a look.
Captain Yates, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
So we are at DSEI. We're standing in front of the Tempest, which is a wonderful example of a program that brings together multiple allies, multiple partners to produce a single system. You look at C2, you are also very focused on multi-domain. So for the current state of development, how from the start of a program does something like C2 and multi-domain need to be considered throughout the course of development?
So looking at command and control, integration, information innovation are key to what we're thinking about. That innovation is going to come from governments, it's going to come from militaries, it's going to come from industrial and academic partners. So all the same concepts in Team Tempest will be the kind of concepts we're looking at in command and control.
Yeah, so when you think of command and control, even at the service level, you of course are coming at it from the Royal Air Force perspective. There is so much involved in terms of integration of multiple systems. When you consider multi-service going international, that becomes more complicated. So how are you approaching and the service approaching integration capabilities across different platforms?
So there's multiple lines at work here. So the first thing is to make sure we get a complete conceptual understanding, both as a service, as a defence community, but also across our allies and partners. So there's lots of really good conversations that are happening there. And then working out what information we need to get to the warfighter at the right time to help us make better, quicker decisions. Once we understand our information flows, we can then put technology in place to make it happen. But underpinning all of this is getting and enhancing our high quality people we have in defence and also in our various team members.
Yeah, and I want to mention also standards because I have to imagine we all have to be working from the same playbook as we consider multi-domain and C2, especially in operations. So are the data standards present and is it a matter of just ensuring everybody is on board, and where does that stand right now, would you say?
So data standards are a very big topic, and we will be navigating our way through those again with the same allies and partners as we've talked about. Much will be drawn from the civil sector, and then we shall find a way of pulling that in there. But the key bit is to work out what our information flows are and how we can streamline those flows to make faster, better decisions.
Well, and that brings up the people issue that you kind of mentioned, because this, of course, shifts hierarchies when you're talking about multi-domain. It also is a topic of process and shifts in process. So how do you ensure that the people are trained up on the new technologies, but also know their role in these circumstances?
So we've mentioned several times that people are key to this. So getting people in early as we develop the systems. We do development ops, or known as DevOps, with the military operators alongside the people who will be providing the equipment and the capabilities and the applications, and then we can work out what the training looks like. Also, if we design our new applications right, they'll come with very low training tariffs, intuitive to use, making things simple. So more of our people will be in at the coalface doing the work rather than the training pipeline getting them ready for it.
Okay, I know in the United States we have challenges in terms of procurement speed and working fast enough to keep up with technology. I think this is a global problem. I will let you speak to that, but how do we need to shift our approach in terms of development as well as buying to keep up with what is happening in commercial technology today?
So here in the UK, the Royal Air Force got some really exciting initiatives. We're standing in front of Team Tempest, which is run through the Rapid Capabilities Office in the Royal Air Force. We also have the AIX, the Air Information Experimentation Laboratory, which seeks to do very similar for information, and they are one of my key assets to help me bring the C2 transformation program forward.
Okay, and is there an open dialogue happening with industry in terms of attracting new players? We have the traditional defense players, but I think these days there's a need to bring in new technologies, non-traditional players from the tech world. So what are the efforts in that area?
So in the AIX, they're definitely engaging with non-traditional players, bringing in expertise where it sits, and we'll have an open dialogue with anyone who can assist us with it.
Okay,
and
great.
So the RCO, the RCO and the AIX are two great avenues we've got for exploiting that great potential out there.
And do you feel there's an open dialogue with the United States and other allies in this area too, as developments occur, and then obviously implementation in theater, in operations? How much of a collaborative effort is there?
There's a huge collaborative effort going into the United States Air Force and into the rest of the Department of Defense and other actors such as the Five Eyes community and wider. Conversations going on. Multi-domain operations has been on people's lips for a long time, and the conversations have moved beyond the initial conceptual stage and now into some very applied thinking. It's an exciting time.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
That's all we have time for here from DSEI in London. But if you want to read more, be sure to visit our digital show daily at defensenews.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Defense News is proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.